England, where we've had some quite big news this week, which you might have heard about, which is our Prince Harry getting engaged to your lovely Meghan Markle. Well, your lovely Meghan Markle if you're in the States, where I know a lot of the Hay House radio listeners are. So this show is called Weekly Astrology with Yasmin because my name's Yasmin Boland and I do weekly astrology on this show. So stay tuned. For the next hour or so, just under an hour, we'll be talking about what's coming up in the stars. I'm an astrologer, I'm a moonologer, I'm a Hay House author of various books including Moonology, a guide to working with the magic of the lunar cycles, and Astrology, which can teach you how to read your own or anyone else's chart. I also write horoscopes all over the world, including Australia and New Zealand Yahoo, the Sunday Telegraph's Body and Soul section in Australia, if you're listening down under, and here in the UK, including in magazines such as Red, Spirit and Destiny, and Chat It's Fate. So this show today comes to you in 4 parts. First of all, we're going to take a look at the week ahead astrology. What's going on in the stars? What can you expect? Is it going to be an easy ride or not? And what about that Mercury retrograde? We'll also take a look at Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, their charts, and the basics of love compatibility. And I don't know if you saw all the interviews that they did yesterday. I don't know if it's as big news in America as it is here in England. It's sort of front page news here about Prince Harry getting engaged. He said the stars were aligned when I met Megan, sorry, I think that's how she pronounces it. And I just want to say he was completely right, and I'm going to touch on that. Plus we get a full moon this week, so I'm going to be talking about the full moon, and I'm also going to be talking to my guest, Margaret Romero, about the full moon and how any of us can use that to let go of the past. Plus, please do call in and I will take your calls and look at your chart. So let's get down to it. So this week brings the last full moon of 2017. So it's a really, really important moon to work with. The thing is that the full moon is always about letting go. Can you feel the full moon energy building it? The full moon is actually going to take place on the 4th of December in Sydney around 2:46 a.m. in fact. So if you're in Sydney on December the 3rd, if you go out in the garden at night, you will see the moon as full as she's going to get between then and the next morning, because she's going to be full at 2:46 a.m. on December 4. Now in London or in the States, actually the full moon will take place on the 3rd of December, and you can check out my site moonology.com. Like astrology, but moonology.com. You can check out Moonology for moon times. They are plastered all over the place. But in a nutshell, New York, December 3, 10:46 a.m. is when the moon is going to be full. So in the case of New Yorkers, and in fact in Los Angeles and anyone in between, going out on December 2 is probably your best bet to see the moon full and gorgeous. And then in London, same, December 2, see the moon at her full swelling, because she'll be officially full in the afternoon of December the 3rd around 3:46 p.m. So you may or may not know that each full moon takes place in a different sign of the zodiac. Now this week, the full moon's taking place in the sign of Gemini. And the energy is very changeable and fickle, and quite interesting because the moon is very emotional, but Gemini is not. So it's kind of a bit like having lots of emotions and not quite knowing where they're coming from or what to do with them. So if you've been feeling a bit like that, you are tuning in to the full moon. I always like to give 5 questions to ask yourself at the time of the full moon. And again, I think on the front page of my site, Moonology, you will find a download for these 5 questions. But let me just read them to you. It's really worth asking yourself these questions now and in the lead up to the full moon in a couple of days' time. So the first question would be, have I been gossipy? Have I been superficial? Have I been flighty? Anything like that? Because Gemini does have that energy, and as I say every single week on this show, we all have all the signs in our chart. So no matter what sign you are, you have Gemini in your chart somewhere, and where you have Gemini is where you are possibly being a little bit gossipy, a little bit superficial, a little bit flighty. You know, have you been glossing over other people's feelings, or too quick to change your mind, changing your mind every 5 minutes, getting into trouble for it with your friends and family? Have you been too restless, you know, instead of just thinking, you know what, I love where I am, I'm so happy to be here, constantly thinking of the next thing and what you might move on to? Have you been too much of a silver-tongued hustler? And we all know when we're doing the hustle. I love watching Gabby Bernstein, who's another, I think, Hay House author. And, you know, she always talks about when you're selling things, if something feels too salesy, then stop, because it's not right. You shouldn't feel salesy. You should share stuff. So kind of the opposite. If you've been a silver-tongued hustler, cease and desist. Time to stop. Time to put your heart back into whatever it is you're doing. And finally, the other question, the fifth question, have I done enough reading to keep expanding my mind? I'm not sure of any statistics, but I have a strong impression that people are reading a lot less now than they used to. So if that sounds like you and you know you need to do a bit more reading, then, you know, consider making reading more one of your New Year's resolutions. As I said, this is the last full moon of the year. So it's a really, really good time to start to work on what you want to leave behind in 2017. What didn't work? What do you not want more of in 2018? I will encourage you, and I'll talk about this next week on the show, on the December 12 show. I would encourage you to be making a gratitude list and a forgiveness list and a letting go list and a welcoming list. All sorts of lists we'll be talking about next week. But for now, with the full moon, which takes place before the next show, think about what you want to let go. Write it down on a piece of paper, particularly on the night of the fullest of the moon, on the times I gave before, and just burn it. Write it down. What am I releasing? What do I no longer want? What do I forgive? What do I let go of? And burn the list. Burn it, because you do not want to dwell on it. You want to write it down, express it. You get it? Express it. When we express something, we get rid of it. Express it on paper and then burn it. Okay, and also the full moon always also takes place, obviously it takes place in a sign, and then it triggers a particular part of our charts. So I'm going to read quite quickly through these, because I don't want to talk too long about each sign, because it's not interesting if it's not your sign. But it's food for thought, and you can always dig in a bit further on my site, moonology.com. You can check out my full moon info sheets, which I'll give you a URL for in a minute. But overall, this is what it's all about. The full moon is about climaxes and conclusions, and also illuminates things, and it causes a bit of a tug of war as well. So for Aries, the full moon in Gemini is taking place in your third house of communication. So partly for you, it's about deciding that the grass isn't greener, but it's also about changing the way you think. For Taurus and Taurus rising people, the full moon will be taking place in your second house, which is to do with cash, property and possessions. So for you, it's about balancing what you're earning, what you're spending, thinking about your incomings, your outgoings, and also perhaps letting go of any fear regarding cash and starting to think about your financial plans for 2018, how you plan to make your fortune, if you plan to make your fortune. For Gemini, it's taking place in your sign, the full moon, Gemini rising. So basically it means this is a turning point for you. It always comes at around about this time of year, so you're actually really lucky, because it means that you kind of get to make some big changes in your life just as the year is ending. So that's kind of perfect timing. For Cancer and Cancer rising people, the tug of war is across your 6th and 12th houses, which is basically saying that there's a tug of war going on between all the duties that you have to do and your own need for time out. So if you're Cancerian or Cancer rising and you're not meditating, I strongly suggest that you start. Leo and Leo rising, it's to do with your friends and your friendships. There's a tug of war for you between what you want, what you feel, you know, is your right, and how you want to express yourself and be your creative self, versus what you need to do for your friends. For Virgo or Virgo rising people, it's about your home and family. So tug of war between home and family, personal and professional demands. You need to find a balance. For Libra and Libra rising people, it's in your 9th house. So you're just generally being asked to see the bigger picture. Focus on the positive. I can't say that enough. Doesn't mean you don't acknowledge the negative. We've been talking about that a lot on the show in the past few weeks, working with the dark side, but focus on the light side. Scorpio, it's your 8th house, so there are changes coming for you related to money and or sex. Sagittarius or Sagittarius rising, the full moon's in your love zone, so either a relationship is flaring up into a kind of explosive state, or you're going to be able to take it to the next level. Capricorn, it's for you, it's about focusing on what you have to do, putting some emotional investment into your responsibilities and duties while still managing to have an inner life with meditation or chanting or yoga or whatever. For Aquarius, it's time, something's coming up to the boil regarding a creative issue, a child, or a romantic situation. And finally, Pisces or Pisces rising, the full moon's taking place in your 4th house, which is the part of your chart which is all about home and family. So there's big things coming on the home and family front. Now, if you would like to know more about that, I strongly recommend grabbing my full moon info sheets, which I've put a link to on the front page of my site, moonology.com. So if you hop over there, you should be able to get a link quite easily to get the full moon info sheets and find out more about what it all means. Also this week, Mercury is going to start a retrograde cycle in the sign of Sagittarius, and Venus is going to move into the sign of Sagittarius, and Saturn is already in Sagittarius and about to leave. So it's all big change for everybody at the moment because of all the astrological aspects taking place. Now, let's start by talking about Mercury retrograde. I was chatting to a lovely person I know who works at the Daily Mail, which is one of the major newspapers here in the UK, about an hour ago. And she was talking about about some articles maybe I could write for 2018 and what's going on. And she said something which really surprised me. She said, it's only been about 12 months that Mercury retrograde has really become a household expression. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, because I actually thought it was longer than that. But, she's a corporate journalist. I've met her in the flesh a couple of times. She's quite cosmic, but without being very cosmic. She's more corporate than she is anything else. I think if you had to choose between cosmic and corporate, maybe she'd correct me, I'm not sure. Anyway, so I was interested to hear that she thinks that Mercury retrograde is now a well-known phenomena that touches, that people understand. So yes, we're about to go into a new Mercury retrograde cycle, and I'll tell you when that is. That is going to be on December the 3rd. So in fact, it's really around the time of the full moon as well. So it's kind of, when you get this sort of lineup of things happening, everything's happening at once, what it basically means is that the energies are really intense. Now, I know a lot of you like to use astrology for making predictions. So if you wanted to be making predictions this week, you could say that there's going to be some kind of climax because we've got the full moon taking place. It may come in the form of a conversation, a written or verbal conversation, because the full moon's in Gemini. There could be some people wanting to eat their words or take their words back, or saying, I'm so sorry, can you please forgive me? Let's try again, because we've got Mercury starting to go backwards in the sign of Sagittarius. And if you happen to be one of the people with a book in you who wants to write, Mercury is going backwards in the sign of Sagittarius, which is the sign of publishing, which is kind of interesting. So it's going to be like second chances regarding publishing. Can also be redoing things regarding publishing as well. So that's all stuff to bear in mind. And I also wanted to mention this week that we have a rather major aspect, but it's quite ethereal, so it won't be something that slaps you in the face. Again, it's taking place on the 3rd of December. It's Jupiter trine Neptune. Jupiter trine Neptune, which is amazing because it's going to be fantastic for meditation. Okay, and I personally think meditation is the answer to pretty much everything, and I know it's not always easy to meditate, and I'm just as liable as the next person to get off the meditation track. But if you can launch yourself back into a meditation practice this week, you will be doing it at the right cosmic time. Talking about the full moon, and the time, and the fact that it's the time to let go, a couple of thoughts for you. What do you need to release out into the universe this week? What do you need to let go of this week? What are the best ways to release stuff? Can we release darkness and negativity via the full moon? We've talked a lot in the past few weeks about shadow work. And I've spoken to some very knowledgeable people who've said, yes, you can work with a shadow. And as I've always said, the full moon's a very good time to do that because all our emotions come to the surface. So we might as well release them. It's very important to release our upsets every full moon. If you want to master the law of attraction to create your own life, working with the moon, releasing, forgiving at the time of the full moon is crucial. And it's actually a secret, I think, to being a powerful manifester. Okay, guys, that's it for this week. Thank you for tuning in. You can hear the rest of the show on heyhouseradio.com, radio for your soul. And I'll be back here next week, Tuesday, 4 p.m. London time, 8 a.m. LA time, 11 a.m. New York time, and 1 a.m. Sydney time.